All right. Well, welcome everybody to our first UFIFIS Hemp Perspectives interview. I have with us Carlos Hayden. Before I go any deeper, I just like to say thank you, Carlos, for joining us. And if you would, introduce yourself.
Yes, it's been a pleasure, Zach, and thank you again for inviting me for this awesome opportunity. So yeah, my name's Carlos Hayden, born and raised here in the Treasure Coast, specifically Fort Pierce. I had some family that's in the farming industry back when I was 16. This was probably around 2004, 2005 time, and they were in tree farms doing palm trees out in Jupiter Farms, Florida. And that's just a little introduction of how my agriculture, you know, love has come about. And then since then, of course, obtained some education, worked in many different industries, traveled essentially around the nation, doing some cannabis and hemp projects, and of course, resided back here in Florida to continue my hopeful pathways of continuing the success of my hemp businesses I have going.
That's right. Can you tell us a little bit about those businesses and kind of where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So currently have a hemp genetics company called Volition Seed, and we're offering full-term and full-term and autoflower varieties. We're actually going to be coming out with a new line here within 6 months. It'll be a whole new menu, and it'll be really exciting because it's just varieties that are tailored actually for our subtropical climate here. So it's something to look forward to. And I also have a consulting company. It's Hayden Hemp. I've been working that company for a couple years now here in Florida, and essentially have kind of parlayed it into like a co-op. It's a co-op of 8 farms right now, and vary in size. We have small to large farmers, but for the hemp acreage, we're essentially keeping it to 1 to 5 acres on average. And we range from, we're from all the way up to Clay County, all the way down to Redlands to Charlotte County, even in Martin County as well, which is on the East Coast. So very, very grateful to have the group of farmers working together and essentially running the same SOPs, genetics, and actually working under the same supply chain in regards to distribution. And that's another thing too I'd like to add. We have a processing facility here in Fort Pierce. It's Sea Rock Farms, and I'm essentially the farm advisor for the group, and I help the group bring in farmers to process their material from drying it to pre-rolls, to trimming it, to shucking and bucking it, to long-term storage with nitrous, to closed-loop ethanol, white film distillation, to offering potency testing like HPLC testing, and we also do a few other things as well with the company. So our mission there is to try to bring the farmers together, not only just the co-op, but the community of Florida and anyone that's interested in trying to be a part of what we're building here. Essentially, we believe in helping the farmers truly, and that's by giving them a good price for their products, and enabling an opportunity for farmers to be profitable in what they're producing. As everyone knows, it's been a volatile market across the country, and it's been really tough for us farmers to survive with with material that's going for 70 cents a pound, for example, which essentially no farmer can make money with a number like that. So essentially we're fighting against that, but the group I'm working with at Sea Rock is a great group of people. We are very motivated to bring people together and really create a true viable hemp market for Florida and hopefully surrounding areas, even internationally. So, it's something I hope others can consider, because we're willing to help the farmer truly with the bottom lines and working with the numbers and making sure that there's some profits made for everybody involved.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. And of course, you're living it, so you truly understand that the hemp business really takes putting a whole lot of pieces together, from the farming into the processing, marketing. Of course, you mentioned the genetics kind of starts it all. I'm just curious, can you share with us what your biggest challenge has been in hemp business?
Sure. The biggest challenge has been finding the best way to grow autoflowers. And the reason I bring that up is because autoflowers as a model for scale and for commercial production is a great style of growing. It's a really cost-effective style of growing. The upsides of it is it's a short-term crop. It doesn't matter what the time of the day is, it's going to flower. And some take 0 to 60 from seed, some are 0 to 70, and we have ones that go all the way up to 90 days. But with that said, we found some challenges in regards to our planting strategy. We haven't been able to mechanize it enough to where it can be scaled, on a let's say 1,000+ acre span. So that's the downside right now that I've found and has been a great challenge on the genetic side for us. But we're steadily working with, I know, some manufacturers, some teammates of our genetic team, and trying to develop something there to help us to get to that point to scale the autoflower growing. And frankly, I won't even call it a challenge. I'll call it a temporary roadblock, because we're going to break through it, and something's going to definitely come out here soon that's going to enable us to have fun with that genetic. And of course, if we're going to add another challenge to the autoflowers is just stabilization. There's a lot of issues in the market in general for autoflowers that the breeders aren't stabilizing the lines good enough. And what I mean by that is, the least amount of phenotypes that you can have in the variety, the better. And the reason for that is because if you look at the bigger picture of things and you're trying, or even the smaller picture when you're going farm to table, you want to have specific terpene profiles, obviously, and certain cannabinoid and flavonoid profiles that the buyer is looking for, or your demographic or consumer is wanting. And so with autoflowers, I find in a lot of breeders, and because I try many breeders, different autos, and not only ours, there's just a wide variety of phenotypes going on. So it can get a little challenging to offer a large scale autoflower operation to a specific buying demographic and fulfill every checkbox consistently. And that's something our breeders here for Volition Seed, which is Kyogen, that's doing all the background work for our genetics and stabilizations, and they're working diligently to make sure that that's our focus is narrowing the phenotypes and having more just more stabilization is key. That's the biggest thing.
Okay. And just to speak a little bit to the farming system, you mentioned the autoflowering genetics and some of those challenges, but I've also seen you have some good success with them. And I think a critical distinction here based on the genetic diversity, the stabilization you mentioned, is that the autoflowers tend to come out as seeds as opposed to as clonal transplants. And so that genetic diversity is built into the system. Then we got to catch up on how we're stabilizing the genetic lines and production of those seeds.
That's right. And, cost effectiveness is everything when it comes to farming, right? So that's why I'm a big proponent for the autoflowers. I'm not here to say that they're the best, but I will say that they're the most cost effective model that you can scale and can really save you a lot of money per acre growing autos. And on a small scale, you can get away with definitely growing some autos. It just takes a little more labor per se to plant them, because you're doing a little higher density planting on your autoflower varieties as compared to the photo full terms.
Can you describe what that farm or planting might look like? A little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. Regarding autoflowers for planting strategy, you're looking at depending on the time of the year, we'll go with the spring, for example. Springtime with autos, we're looking at the minimum, we're looking at 10,000 to 15,000 autos per acre. All right, so you're essentially high density planting the autos. You ideally want to do a dual crop row system to where you're stagger planting the autos on that bed, and and otherwise the full terms, you can do something similar as well. you're able to plant the full terms at a little less density. Let's say for the spring, you're at around about 7,000 to 7,500 per acre in the springtime, and you can actually achieve very similar results. I know a lot of people out there are using supplemental lighting, and I think I think that is a good strategy for some, depending on their style of operations that they're trying to produce there. But I think on a large scale, it's all about using the sun, using the resources that the earth has given us, and making it the most cost-effective way possible. So, with that. Going back to the autos again, it's really hard to beat the time cycle that they enable for you to harvest. It's a 0 to 70 from literally seed. So it's really hard to look away from that, because then you can turn and burn, right? Essentially up to 5 times a year with that kind of setup. So yeah, and then with the full terms, if I love full terms, they're easy to grow, essentially, right? Because they depend on the sun, so they're going to grow. You're going to know when they're going to start flowering. The autos, it's just you got to have to know which variety you're working with, how long does it flower for, right? And making sure that you're switching up your feeds at the right time to support the nutritional value that the crop is requesting at the time that, let's say, it's transitioning to bloom or whatnot.
Yeah, you mentioned easy to grow. I'm a little surprised to hear you say hemp has been easy to grow in Florida, but maybe this is you haven't learned some things over the last couple of years.
Yeah, one main thing I'll have to say: microbes. I don't care who you are, microbes have really enabled us to be successful. We have a really cool microbe diversity product that we use. Not here to sell it, I'm just here to let you know that to look into microbes. And I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share some of the knowledge I've learned over the years here in Florida and what works in our sand. I've grown in white Punta Gorda sand with no cation exchange, no EC, nothing good about the white sand. Unfortunately, it's literally like hydroponics, to the black gold and the Clewiston area, Immokalee area as well, and have been able to find great success in both places. And then we even go as far as, we got some great, the grayer sand that's on the East Coast, and we have had success there too. And I have to attribute it to microbes. And why I say that is because, using the specific varieties of microbes into the soil has really helped unlock all the issues that would come up without these species of microbes that you put into your beds, because that's what I found to be most challenging when it comes to growing hemp in Florida and in our sand, is a lot of lockouts, because unfortunately the sand is very porous, doesn't have a good holding capacity, organic matter's low, things of that nature. That's caused some challenges for farmers that might not understand microbes that well, or have a good source of microbes. So with that, I'll say that's the biggest key right there. Secondly is understanding, organic biostimulants. I think the organic biostimulants is a really huge factor in the hemp crop and the nutrition value that you can offer it through using these type of elements. Just to name a few, silica, aminos, just to name some right there, that have been a great help in decreasing our use of macronutrients. And so that essentially has helped us eliminate, some toxic runoff, right? Because that's one of the issues with hemp, in my opinion, is high nitrate uses or requirements are needed for this plant. So there's ways to cut that nitrogen use and actually use things that are more bioavailable, such as aminos. I found, microbes and aminos to really help us grow this crop in a really successful way, and not have to deteriorate our soil. It's been lovely to see organic matter rise in all our plots that we've grown in here in Florida over a 90-day span.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. That's really good feedback. Our science has been a little short of a lot of that soil health movement, just because we're starting in a little bit different place with the research, but it's exciting to hear. that you've been able to emphasize soil health and some of these nutrient additions in some creative ways. That's exciting. So thinking about the different soil types you mentioned, from the muck to the sand, are you growing hemp differently on those farms, or is your system more or less consistent?
Yeah, so it does vary location to location, of course. I essentially, I join the farmers in regards to their production strategies, their cultivation techniques, and try to help them as much as I can as they allow. And so, with that said, it varies, and really, like for example, you go to Charlotte County, which is the west coast of Florida, with the whiter sand, more porous sand. We find there the crops grow great. They actually love the hydroponic type of setup there. It just requires a lot more organic matter to be given in those areas to create a little better holding capacity, for example, of keeping your beds wet, and keeping the microbes alive and things of that nature. In comparison to like the south of the lake, where all the darker soil is, the black gold, as they say, has a lot of organic matter, and a few of the farmers that I work with there have really taken care of their plots of land, and much respect to those farmers, because I know they've done decades and decades of soil health. You call it remediation, supplementation, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's a really awesome place to grow there. But yeah, there is a difference. I'm not, plant size wise, it varies for sure. But in regards to quality, I'm finding essentially with our programs that we're running throughout the co-op, quality is kind of staying consistent. And I think I have to give it to the genetics. Genetics have really helped enable that. And of course, harvest time, knowing exactly when to really pick is a really big key and success for this, because you can pick, you have that 15-day window currently for Florida law to, after you get a compliance test done. You pick what, you're excited, you pick within that week of that compliance test, as opposed to maybe waiting another week, let's say. You're essentially your chemical content will change pretty drastically depending on, your strategy of growing the crop for those 2 weeks. So, that's something that's very crucial for I think that everyone to know, is to really time their harvest so that they can really get that quality out there, because it's all about CBD percentage in the end, or cannabinoid percentage for the processors.
Right.
So we found in our genetics so far, for Volition Seed, all of our menu, we've been able to achieve our 10% plus, but the key has been really knowing when to harvest it.
10% CBD as a harvest goal.
Yes, of course. Yes, and still compliant. Yes, sir.
All right. And not to fact check, we'll have to look into this, but I think over the course of last year, the FDAX changed the harvest from the 15 days ahead to the 30 days ahead. So we'll have to check on that. That is definitely make a big difference for the farmers.
I hope it's 30 days. I say 15, without fact checking it, I guess. But at one point it was 30 days, and then I get a letter in the email or something like that, and it went back to 15. So I just stay safe and say 15.
Okay. All right. It's definitely gone back and forth a couple times.
I really hope it's 30, because it really will make a difference in our end product quality.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks. So what's the most exciting experience you've had so far with hemp?
Most exciting is growing Autoflowers and full terms and comparing the two, finding out the density, the ideal density planting marks that we need to achieve certain yields and standards of quality production, and really enjoying just the diversity of weather that Florida offers. I think that's all really saying. I like challenge. I like, being pushed in a corner and having to get myself out of there and constantly, fighting my way through things. So I enjoy that aspect of agriculture, and honestly, hemp. Hemp is a very finicky crop. It is an easy crop to grow once you actually understand the nutritional rates that it needs, and also understand some basic irrigation strategies to keep keep her happy and healthy. But yeah, so with that said, the most exciting has honestly been doing a lot of research and development with the genetic side of things, and really understanding all the different chemical contents that they express, all the different colors, structures, bud densities, flavors. Love it.
All right, thanks. Is there a special project or business goal that you'd like to share with us? You're kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I think what's really important right now in our business model from a processing co-op side of things is to just bring good people together, have them understand one goal, and that's to produce a high quality, ethical hemp product. And we want to be able to serve a large demographic of consumer base, whether it's a big box company, whether it's a retail store, whether it's a pharmaceutical company, or it's even farm to table aspects. We want to serve all avenues, and we want to do it with all quality focused as the priority. So, I think what makes that exciting is we are really driven to help the farmer. I know many say that in this industry, but frankly, that's what we're doing and what we have been doing so far. And we're approaching a harvest time here in about a month, and we're going to be purchasing some biomass and also doing some flour, with one of our co-op members. And that co-op member has had some really tough times finding a good buyer, finding a logical deal to make for all the hard work that's put into the crop. And we're just really proud to be able to finally lend a hand to some of our Clewiston folks that are producing down there. So, to I guess focus back to the question, what's most exciting is we're trying to make this profitable. We are making this profitable, and we have avenues to make it profitable. So it's something exciting for everybody in Florida to really, participate in at this point.
Yeah, it's taken a few years to get to this point, but it's a lot of fun to hear about your success. So I guess the last question that I have for you today, just thinking about some folks that are just getting into the industry or still looking to get their legs under them, what would you tell someone getting started growing hemp or starting a hemp business?
Sure. Just make sure that you have other hats you wear as you pursue this industry. I think this is a really, really awesome industry to be a part of. It's just very early still. And I think it's a safe bet with the volatility that we have to deal with in the industry, and a lot of the snake oil that we have to deal with as well that's in the industry. Just be prepared for a lot of volatility, and be prepared to fail, essentially. I hate to use that word right now. We can call it challenges, but be prepared for those things, and have something in collateral, or have another business going while you're doing some hemp farming. And that's the best advice I can give right now.
All right. Yeah. So thank you, Carlos. This has been fun for me to hear from you. I think you said a lot of really interesting things. And is there anything else that you'd like to say for our viewers or listeners?
Hey, anybody that's interested in finding out more, I'm more than happy to share. I'm more than happy to help any way that I can be a support to your journey in this industry. I have to say I've been through a lot of thick and thin, and we're at a point now where we can actually do a lot of positive, good things for the community. And I'm really excited to say that right now, because we really are working with a good group here, from co-op to our processing partners, to really make this viable. So if you guys want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to speak with you guys. I have an email. The email is haydenhempfl@gmail.com, and that's haydenhempfl@gmail.com. And of course, we do have our volitionseed.com, which is our genetics company, and there is a email for that as well, and that's info@bolitionsseed.com. And more than happy to help you guys out. If you guys want to come visit the facility, you want to come check out some farms, please contact me. More than happy to share and let you guys check out what we're up to.
Thank you, Carlos Hayden. I appreciate that. We mentioned a lot of things in the interview. Your contact information and such can be posted along with the video as well. So thank you
Awesome.
so much. I really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you, Zach. Pleasure.